and welcome back to Kings Comics for another big episode of Kapow. I'm Sonia, that is Al, and we have so much awesome to share with you this week.
We do, don't we? There's just so much of it. We're like a multicolored piñata full of comics, cartoons, and collectibles. So smash us with a stick and just watch it all tumble out.
No, that's going too far with the metaphor.
Well, technically that's a simile, not a metaphor.
Fine. Look, why don't we let you guys know what we're looking at this week, and we can argue semantics later.
That sounds like a good idea. We're reviewing Overtaken from R.I.P.D Comics, the American Vampire Anthology, and Alan Moore's Fashion Beast.
We'll also be discussing the new movie R.I.P.D, and Ray and I will take a look at Valvrave The Liberator.
That is a good name.
Yeah, isn't it though?
Yeah. Now, you see, the thing is, because I said we were like a piñata, that's why it's a simile. You know, instead, because if it was just a... Fine.
Overtaken is the latest in R.I.P.D Comics 10 for 10 series. 10 new first issue comics, all for $1 each, celebrating the company's 10-year anniversary. It seems like R.I.P.D's trying to carve a new niche for itself in the industry, and it's certainly chosen from a wide range of genres.
Yeah, and with Overtaken, they jump into the sci-fi arena, kicking off with an alien war between two species who presumably hate each other because they're two different colours. But that must make it easier to tell who's on your team during the heat of battle. I did like the opening scenes, although I thought they could have been grander and more chaotic. In the 2-page spread of battle near the start, it looks like there's only around maybe 50 aliens involved in the whole war.
Of course, after the first 6 pages, we go from a planet far, far away to a young couple who's starting their new life in a small town called Turtle Creek in Minnesota. They talk about their relationship, they redirect their mail, they unpack some boxes. It's truly riveting stuff.
You know, with my laser-like perception, I am detecting just a hint of sarcasm there.
Just a
tiny
bit,
one. Yeah.
Look, I understand that in a first issue you want to create some great empathy for your main characters, but here it is so painfully overdone. Most of this comic is given over to Will and Jesse expressing their love for each other, and I just kept praying for the aliens to show up.
They are quite insipid, aren't they? I understand there's a contrast being made between the big alien war and this idyllic Minnesota town, but it all dragged pretty badly. Frank Mastroianni really needed to snap this up.
Yeah.
I mean, the pace is plodding, and the dialogue is honestly quite dull and flaccid as well.
On the other hand, I quite liked Marco Lorenzana's pencils and Wes Hartman's colours. I have certainly seen better, but they did create a good overall visual feel for the story.
Yeah, it looks decent, but I just couldn't get past the pacing issues. I mean, this jumps from fast-paced to completely stalled like a teenager on their old plates. And all the time spent showing how happy this pretty young couple is actually made me actively dislike them rather than caring about them. I'm giving this one a berry.
Yeah, look, I couldn't shake this feeling of watching kind of a low-budget 80s sci-fi movie. There's nothing here that's new that really hooks me in and makes me want to keep reading. And even with the art, I'm actually going to give this one a burn. This series might improve in time, but I'm certainly not going to stick around to find out.
Fair enough.
Hey Ray.
Hi Sonia, hi guys.
So what's this week's anime about?
A vampiric mecha pilot doing battle to liberate humanity from, well, itself.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's called Kaku Meiki Valvrave, or Valvrave The Liberator in the West. The year is True Calendar 71, a new age where 70% of the human population lives in space. The world is divided into 2 main powers, the Dorsia, a power which grew out of a military alliance, and the Arus, which grew to power through its trade allegiances. Outside of this is a third, smaller, neutral force named Jior. It is here that our hero Haruto once led an ordinary life. That is, until a Dorsian military invasion gave rise to a decision that alters his future forever.
Early on in this series, you might feel like there's a lot of unanswered questions,
Yeah.
but that's because this has been slated for 2 seasons, so they're all going to get revealed as the story goes on.
Yeah, look, I'm not too worried by that, to be honest. It's not as though they're starving the audience of information.
No.
The characters as well are discovering this as we are, and so I think it's a considered choice, and I quite enjoy, you know, that suspense element.
Yeah.
So it's written by Ichiro Okuchi, who gave us Code Geass, and look, I think that fans out there, the peeps, are quite confident in what he's going to produce.
Yeah, and the script is pretty good. The dialogue is certainly really interesting.
Oh yeah, I thought so too, and that's quite difficult to do given that this territory is quite well trodden.
Yeah.
I also thought they've integrated the characters quite well. From the very beginning, the momentum is good, which sometimes means the introduction of a character may only be a simple image, which is expanded upon later.
And even though some of the characters are somewhat cliche, they're kept really fresh in their dialogue and design.
Yeah, and there's plenty of variety in there, and characteristically, the personalities show diversity. The animation, though, is fiercely quick. It may be because I was watching it on my laptop, but when those Valvrave units start fighting, I found it hard to see what exactly was going on.
But the series does look great. Everything is so crisp and the movement of the characters is smooth.
And a testament to that is when they let loose with the handheld firearms. The bodies are impacted upon flawlessly. It looks awesome.
No punches are pulled in this either when it comes to the violence or the themes.
No, and I don't think there should be either with this kind of series. Although I did think that they could have followed through with a few of the decisions as opposed to reneging on them. I thought that that could have had greater impact on the story, having greater consequences for the characters within that as well. But you look, besides that, it's still very, very busy. There's a lot happening. In fact, on the busy side, I want to mention the sound. At times I thought it was quite intrusive. It wasn't so much the sound design or the composition, but rather the levels. It seemed to hit a high level and it didn't really match the visual that was happening, which is odd because on other occasions it was excellent.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I found that sometimes it made the scenarios quite cheesy.
Yeah.
It's like I'm watching a great action and then the music comes in and it's a bit, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think this has the potential to be another crowd favourite. There is some random fan service in here which was so left of field, I just had to laugh.
Yes, I thought so too. There was a part I had to rewind to see if what I saw was really what I thought I saw.
And was that the only reason you went back to that scene?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There are characters in here that I genuinely feel about, and I want to see how they develop, which kind of makes it more than just a mech-on-mech fest.
Yes.
I thought the design of the Valvraves, although not the most appealing, I give credit for taking a gamble. If you're after something profound, this is probably not for you, but if you are after some fun and entertainment, then I'd definitely check this one out. It's a borrow from me.
Yeah, look, I'm having a lot of fun watching this anime. It might be my sensibility, but I'm hanging out to see if there's something a little deeper in there. I think the idea of having to resign as a human in order to pilot the Valvraves is quite an interesting concept. I'm not sure why the vampirism idea has been thrown into the mix, but it too arouses a similar curiosity, so I'm keen to see how that's going to develop as well. And just like you, Sonia, I thought some of the technological aspects of this world were a little underwhelming, given that we now live in space. But all those things aside, I'm still going to give it a borrow as well.
Awesome.
It is the furthest thing from a secret that Kapow is a big fan of Scott Snyder's American Vampire series. In a time when vampires in fiction were sparkly ponces with massive hair, he made them scary again. He made them cool again.
Yes.
And he did it all with an awesome story.
And that's why we were excited to see the first American Vampire Anthology come out. With the exception of Stephen King's contribution at the beginning of the series, American Vampire has been solely written by Scott Snyder and drawn mainly by Rafael Albuquerque, so I was really keen to see how other writers and artists would handle this world that they'd created.
Absolutely, and there's a variety of story styles and visual styles on display here. Some of them use existing characters from the series, some of them create new ones, but I've got to say, my favourite in this whole anthology was Essence of Life. Written by Gail Simone with art by Tula Lotte, it reveals an untold chapter from the life of series regular Hattie Haybridge, and really makes the most of the 8-page structure.
I really enjoyed that one as well. It managed to create empathy for one of the series' villains by showing her as a struggling young actress, but ends by reminding us of exactly how scary she can be.
I did find some of the others a little bit standard in terms of the stories they were telling though. Bleeding Kansas, written by Albuquerque with art by Ivo Milazzo for example, has a great watercolour visual style but seems a little by the numbers as a vampire story.
I felt the same way about Last Night by Gabrielle Barr and Fabio Moon. Visually, it's probably my favourite in the anthology. It captures the feeling of the 1940s New York jazz scene beautifully, a real feast for the eyes. But again, the story is a teensy bit predictable. I think overall my favourite was Canadian Vampire, written by Jeff Lemire with art by Ray Fawkes. There's a great minimal feel to the artwork, and it captures the menace and the unease that I love from this series. I really hope that the Canadian vampire pops up in the regular series. He was so cool.
Yeah, well, that's the other cool thing about this anthology, I think. There are plenty of stories in there which could easily be fleshed out into a larger tale, which is great to see. I mean, this is exactly what I needed while I was waiting for the series to return, so
Totally.
I'm giving it a buy.
Yeah, it's such a rich world that Snyder's created here. It's definitely a buy from me as well. There are so many stories yet to be told, which is such great news for fans like us.
Isn't it, though? Oh, when's it coming back? Need it now.
Alright, in a year of comic book adaptations, we've got another one for you. That's right, we took a look at R.I.P.D. Sonia, what did you think?
I didn't enjoy it. There
No?
were so many things wrong with this.
All
Look,
right.
the CGI in this to begin with was appalling. We're beyond this. We've seen better than this. And in
Yeah.
here it was just a bit silly and a bit cartoony. I also thought the actors, I mean, you've got Jeff Bridges, you've got Mary Louise Parker, they're all amazing actors and they're
Yeah.
so underused. I don't understand why would you get those kind of people and then just go, meh, do that, I don't care. And the other thing is, R.I.P.D. has a very strict set of rules in the comic book, which just aren't explained in this film. Nothing is actually explained in this film, and it was
Yeah.
really quite annoying, and it becomes quite confusing, I think, for
Well,
anyone
it
who comes in
rushes you
fresh.
through, doesn't it? It rushes
Yeah.
you through everything very quickly.
I
Yeah.
felt a bit lost with the rules. Like,
yeah.
what are the rules in this world? You know, what are the physics of this world as well? You know, Al, what are your thoughts?
Well, there are a lot of problems with this. I think anybody who's even watched the trailer is going to be able to tell this is Men in Black, but with dead people instead of aliens.
Yeah.
That's you've already picked that.
And with that Will Smith doing a cool dance with
yeah.
all those things.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a film clip?
Good guy
that
dressed in black.
yeah.
Remember that. I won't do the whole thing. Don't worry.
All right.
So there's that.
Oh, yeah.
That was one thing that I found. You know, that's not so much a problem in the comic. You don't feel that's a real issue.
No.
But here it's very clear. Even it looks like a photocopy of the beginning of it in many areas. So that was one problem. Second issue I had with it: if you get Ryan Reynolds into a film and make him the straight guy of a pair.
Why?
That doesn't make any sense.
No.
That doesn't make any sense, especially when the guy who's your funny guy is going to be Jeff Bridges. I mean,
The dude.
the dude.
dude.
I mean, he can do funny, but you give that to Ryan Reynolds. You
Yeah.
give the
Yeah.
funny to Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
And the other problem here, you've got Jeff Bridges playing a cowboy character.
Yeah.
So he's trying to distance it from his Rooster Cogburn
Yep.
in True Grit, and he manages that by doing his character speaking as a dog eating a caramel toffee. Which kind of what I got from either that or he was having a stroke.
It was
Yeah.
He's
distracting
like,
though.
the
Yeah.
whole way through, and it just you couldn't understand a lot of what he
yeah.
was saying.
Yeah,
So
I
that was a
agree.
bit of an issue. He felt like he was phoning it in, to be honest.
Yeah.
They all looked a little bored.
Yeah.
It was a shame because I expected more of him and Ryan Reynolds as well. You know, come on, buddy. You know,
Yeah, you can do it.
Get on through for us, please. But no, he just doesn't. Look, yeah, that I was annoyed with the CGI. I thought the story, the momentum was just chaotic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'd already seen Men in Black.
Yeah.
I've already seen it.
It didn't need a fourth sequel.
No, it's right. It didn't need a second. It didn't need anything. You know, bury that stuff.
Leave it.
I
Yeah.
like the first one.
Yeah, well, yeah, the first one was pretty good, you know. I think it was the dancing.
Yeah, that did it for me. Yeah.
Please give us the dance now.
No.
All right, moving on though.
Yes.
What do you think this will keep fans happy of, who have already invested in the comic book?
I don't think so.
No?
The book's a really good story. It's a really interesting story. It's fun and it's funny, and the movie isn't. And I think the movie kind of gives away a really important plot device right at the start, whereas in the graphic it's kind of a follow through, and that was
Yeah.
really annoying.
I know what you're going with there, because
Yeah.
I mean, in the comic, this guy dies and he doesn't know who's killed him
No.
to start with. So there's a momentum.
mystery there.
There's something that he needs to know right from the off. Whereas in the film, the
He
guy
knows.
sort of faces him and shoots him in the face with an AK. So there's no mystery there.
No.
You know, not that I could think
Pretty
of. And
obvious
that's a
who was
major
doing
bit of
it.
momentum that's just given away
That's
in
right.
this film.
So do you think it will entice those who haven't read the comics to come back and
I
maybe
doubt it.
invest in? No?
I doubt
wouldn't
it.
think so.
I mean, if I hadn't read R.I.P.D. and I watched the movie, I certainly wouldn't
No,
want to
you
read
wouldn't go,
the
"Oh, I might
graphic that
check
it
that
came
out."
from.
No,
No.
you wouldn't think.
I
that
felt
it
like
had
I
much
would have
talent.
been much happier having a look at this in an animated format. I
Yes.
think that would have been pretty cool.
Yep.
Because
Could well
you know,
have been.
I haven't read the comic, but I flipped through the pages, and some of it looks really fun. It feels like something quite fun about the whole thing. But yeah, I just don't think they managed to bring that to life in
The same flavour isn't in evidence.
Yes,
No,
no.
It doesn't
not.
do justice to that
Yeah,
material.
that's right. Well, what about the fact that this has been such a year for comic book
yeah.
adaptations into film? What if this film existed outside of that in another time, like a couple of years ago? Would it impress us then? No?
I think a bad film is a bad film.
Yeah.
You know, it's regardless of whatever it's overshadowed by or whatever it's, coexisting with. This has, it's scattered, it's imprecise, it tries to get you to take things on board without justifying them in any way. It's like, oh, here's a bunch of stuff that happened before the film happened, just so you know, and now go. It doesn't justify any of that, and it just felt like a mess to me.
Yeah, I tend to agree, especially like we were saying, with the kind of actors that are in this, you expect so much more.
You
And
do.
I think we've been so overwhelmed by comic book films this year that, again, we expect more from all of these.
Yeah.
And like you said, though, a bad film is a bad film, no matter what year it was made.
Yeah, well, hopefully it doesn't, pull together enough to make a sequel.
I would doubt it.
Really?
I would
Please,
doubt it.
No sequels?
No sequel.
They're
Just
not
leave
making a
that
big
one.
thing about it going into cinemas. I think it'll be in for a couple of weeks and then gone.
Let it R.I.P.
Okay, well, that's what we thought. So feel free to leave your comments on what you thought of the film on our Facebook and Twitter pages.
The name Alan Moore comes with some obvious cachet, given that he's provided us with some of the most seminal comic works of all time.
Yeah, but the graphic that we're looking at today stands apart from those, given that he actually wrote it as a screenplay in the mid-80s at the behest of Malcolm McLaren, the manager of the punk band the Sex Pistols.
Fashion Beast was conceived as a fractured interpretation of Beauty and the Beast, set against the backdrop of the fashion industry on the home front during a protracted nuclear war.
And if all of that is a little hard to wrap your head around, I don't blame you. Fashion Beast is an odd creature to say the least, but nothing here is out of character for Moore's work, with dystopian themes, sexual identity, and mob mentality all at the forefront.
I think that Anthony Johnson and Facundo Percio have done a great job adapting the original script. They've preserved Moore's voice while injecting their own style into this quite perverse story. We follow a coat check girl called Doll Sequin as she falls into a job as a model for the House of Celestine, the fashion salon around which the entire city revolves.
Then, of course, we meet Celestine himself, the beast of this story, who paradoxically seems to be more of a victim of his situation as the story continues, sitting in a darkened room, providing petty distractions to a nation at war. I recognised elements of movies like Terry Gilliam's Brazil in the DNA of this dystopian tale, but I think that's a symptom of when it was written in the mid-80s. And I think the shallow fixation on image is possibly more relevant now than it was then.
And given its origin, I think Percio has found a really wonderful way to approach the artwork. Many of the frames feel like you're watching a movie, and yet he makes great use of the freedom that the comic medium provides. You get the contrast between the naturalistic and the freakish, the scenes that are almost entirely shown in shadow, the focus and control that the frozen images of a comic provide. I honestly think this works better as a graphic novel than it ever would have as a movie. I really love this story. I'm giving it a buy.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think some of the compositions in there, along with some quite hefty sections of dialogue, mean that this has found its proper home on the page rather than the screen. I mean, I've got to say there were a couple of pacing issues I was feeling, some visual illusions that didn't quite play out as much as I wanted them to, particularly the tarot cards. I wanted that to go somewhere a bit more, but that's all small stuff. It really is. I am still giving this a buy, and another Alan Moore book on the shelves, that's never going to be a bad thing.
Well, that's all we've got for you this week, guys. I hope we haven't left you too full and bloated with awesome.
Well, that's the thing. Kapow can be a bit like fruitcake.
It can.
Sometimes it's a bit rich, a bit dense
Leaves
with all
you
the
a bit
awesomeness.
bilious.
It can do, but you know what? Take a little nap. You'll be right as rain in 20 minutes.
And after your nap, why don't you check out Fan Forge, the latest member to the Kapowian family, full of pop culture, arts and crafts.
Absolutely, and of course, Planet of Capes will
Yes.
also be returning for your cosplay fix.
And we'll be back next week.
Yes.
Lots more comics, cartoons, collectibles, and increasingly inane banter.
Absolutely. So until next week, guys.
Bye.
See, the thing is, because a simile is a metaphor, but a metaphor
Come on, buddy.